Gainesville, Florida. A town bathed in sunshine, known for its youthful energy and sprawling university campus. It was the late 1980s, a time of big hair, neon colors, and a sense of carefree abandon. But beneath the surface of this sunny facade, a darkness was brewing. A string of brutal murders was about to shatter the town's innocence, leaving an indelible mark on its soul. The first whispers of fear began in late August 1990. Students were returning to the University of Florida, their laughter and excitement filling the air, but that youthful joy would soon be replaced by a chilling dread. The news, once filled with stories of football games and fraternity parties, was now dominated by headlines that sent shivers down the spines of Gainesville's residents. The peace was shattered. The murders began, sudden and brutal, shaking the community to its core. The victims, all young, all full of life, were found in their apartments, their lives taken in acts of unspeakable violence. Fear gripped Gainesville, a fear that seeped into every corner of the town, transforming everyday life into a nerve-wracking ordeal. Parents feared for their children, students for their roommates, and the once vibrant streets of Gainesville took on an eerie silence as darkness fell. The nightmare unfolded over 5 terrifying days, from August 24th to 28th, 1990. It was a period that would forever be etched into the memories of those who lived through it, a time when the very fabric of the community was torn apart by an unimaginable evil. 5 young lives brutally cut short, their potential extinguished by a darkness that no one could have anticipated. These were vibrant individuals, full of dreams and aspirations, each one with a unique story and a future that was cruelly stolen from them. The victims, Sonia Larson, Christina Powell, Krista Hoyt, Manuel Taboada, and Tracy Paulas, were more than just names in a news report. They were beloved members of their families and communities. Each one had a life filled with promise, and their loss was felt deeply by all who knew them. They were daughters, sons, friends, their futures stolen in a whirlwind of violence that left the community reeling. The grief was palpable, a heavy weight that hung over the town as families and friends struggled to come to terms with the senseless brutality that had shattered their lives. The first victims, Sonia Larson and Christina Powell, were found on August 26th. Their discovery marked the beginning of a harrowing ordeal for the residents of Gainesville as the reality of the threat they faced began to sink in. Their bodies, bearing the marks of unimaginable cruelty, were discovered in their apartment, a chilling testament to the horror that had visited them. The scene was one of utter devastation, a stark reminder of the evil that had invaded their lives. The news spread like wildfire, igniting a wave of panic and fear. The community, once a place of safety and comfort, was now gripped by a pervasive sense of dread as the reality of the threat they faced became all too clear. The police, working tirelessly to solve the crimes, found themselves in a race against time, desperate to catch the perpetrator before he could strike again. Every lead was pursued, every piece of evidence meticulously examined as the pressure mounted to bring the killer to justice. But the killer was relentless. He moved through the shadows, striking fear into the hearts of the community, his next move unpredictable and terrifying. On August 27th, Krista Hoyt became the next victim. Her body discovered in her apartment, the scene eerily similar to the previous murders. The pattern was becoming clear, and the sense of urgency grew ever more intense. The brutality of the crimes, the seeming randomness of the victims, only served to heighten the terror gripping Gainesville. No one felt safe, and the fear was palpable, a constant presence that haunted every waking moment. The once peaceful town was now living under a cloud of fear, the specter of the unknown killer looming large over every street corner, every darkened doorway. The sense of community was replaced by suspicion and anxiety, as everyone wondered who would be next and when the nightmare would finally end. The investigation intensified, with law enforcement agencies from across the state pouring resources into Gainesville. The small town, once known for its peaceful streets and close-knit community, was now the epicenter of a massive manhunt. Officers worked around the clock, sifting through evidence, interviewing witnesses, and following up on countless leads. The pressure was immense. The eyes of the nation were on this small Florida town, everyone waiting with bated breath for news of a break in the case. Media outlets from across the country descended upon Gainesville, broadcasting every development, every rumor, and every piece of speculation. The townspeople, gripped by fear and anxiety, clung to their televisions and radios, hoping for a glimmer of hope. And then, a name emerged from the darkness: Danny Rolling. The revelation sent shockwaves through the community. Who was this man? What drove him to commit such heinous acts? As details of his past began to surface, a portrait of a deeply troubled individual started to form. A drifter with a troubled past, Rolling was no stranger to the law. His criminal record was extensive, filled with charges ranging from petty theft to more serious offenses. He had spent years drifting from place to place, leaving a trail of crime and chaos in his wake. His life was a series of dark chapters, each more disturbing than the last. His crimes weren't limited to Gainesville. Rolling's violent tendencies had manifested long before he arrived in Florida. He had a history of violent outbursts and had been implicated in several other crimes across different states. His transient lifestyle made it difficult for authorities to track him, allowing him to evade capture for years. He was wanted in connection with a triple homicide in his home state of Louisiana, a chilling foreshadowing of the horrors he would inflict in Florida. The brutality of those murders was a grim precursor to the terror he would unleash in Gainesville. The connection between the two cases became a crucial piece of the puzzle for investigators. The evidence against Rolling began to mount. DNA evidence linked him to the crime scenes, and his MO matched the chilling pattern of the Gainesville murders. Forensic experts worked tirelessly, analyzing every piece of evidence, every fiber, every drop of blood. The meticulous work of the crime lab was instrumental in building a case against him. He was apprehended in a nearby county, caught for a robbery, seemingly unconcerned about the massive manhunt underway for the Gainesville Ripper. His arrest was almost anticlimactic, a stark contrast to the terror he had inflicted. As he was led away in handcuffs, the full weight of his crimes began to sink in for the community. With Rolling in custody, a collective sigh of relief swept through Gainesville. The sense of fear that had gripped the town began to lift, replaced by a cautious optimism. Families who had been living in fear could finally sleep a little easier, knowing that the man responsible for their nightmares was behind bars. The nightmare, it seemed, was finally over. Life in Gainesville slowly began to return to normal. Schools reopened, businesses resumed their regular hours, and the streets, once deserted, were filled with the sounds of daily life. But beneath the surface, the scars of those 5 terrifying days remained. But the scars ran deep, the memory of those 5 terrifying days forever etched into the town's psyche. Memorials were held, candles were lit, and the community came together to mourn the victims and support one another. The collective trauma was palpable, a reminder of the fragility of their once peaceful existence. The image of Danny Rolling, the man who had brought such horror to their doorstep, became synonymous with evil, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the sunniest of places. His face, now infamous, served as a stark warning of the potential for evil that exists in the world, a haunting symbol of the terror that had once gripped Gainesville. Section 4. Behind bars, but not forgotten. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, Danny Rolling initially pleaded not guilty to the Gainesville murders. His plea shocked many, as the evidence was not just substantial, but overwhelming. The community watched in disbelief as he maintained his innocence, a move that seemed to prolong their agony. He seemed to revel in the notoriety, the fear he had instilled in an entire community. Rolling's demeanor in court was unsettling. He appeared almost smug, as if he enjoyed the attention and the chaos he had caused. The community, still reeling from the loss of their loved ones, held vigils and sought solace in each other. But the weight of his crimes eventually proved too heavy to bear. The facade of bravado began to crack, revealing a man tormented by his own actions. In the solitude of his prison cell, Rolling was left alone with his thoughts, the reality of his heinous acts slowly sinking in. In 1994, Rolling finally confessed to the murders. His confession was a turning point in the case, a moment that many had been waiting for. It was a grim acknowledgement of the horrors he had inflicted upon the community. He recounted the gruesome details of his crimes, his words sending chills down the spines of even the most seasoned law enforcement officers. The graphic nature of his confession was almost too much to bear, painting a vivid picture of the terror he had unleashed. His confessions were chilling, devoid of remorse, painting a picture of a man consumed by his own twisted desires. Rowling's lack of emotion was perhaps the most disturbing aspect, as he described his actions with a cold, detached demeanor. Rowling's confession brought a sense of closure, but it did little to ease the pain of the victims' families. For them, the loss was immeasurable, a void that could never be filled. They clung to the memories of their loved ones, seeking comfort in the small moments they had shared. Their loved ones were gone, their futures stolen, and no amount of justice could ever truly heal those wounds. The community erected memorials, places where they could gather to remember and honor the lives that had been so tragically cut short. His trial was a media spectacle, the nation captivated by the story of the Gainesville Ripper. Journalists from across the country descended upon the courthouse, eager to capture every moment of the trial. The public followed the proceedings with a morbid fascination, unable to look away from the unfolding drama. He was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to death. The verdict was met with a mix of relief and sorrow, a bittersweet moment for the families of the victims. Justice had been served, but it could never bring back those who had been lost. The sentence, while expected, did little to quell the lingering horror of his crimes. The community continued to grapple with the aftermath, the shadow of Rowling's actions looming large over their lives. Danny Rowling would spend the next 12 years on death row, his name forever etched in the annals of true crime, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can reside in the human heart. His time on death row was marked by reflection and isolation, a stark contrast to the chaos he had once caused. The story of the Gainesville Ripper remains a haunting chapter in the history of crime, a testament to the enduring impact of his actions. Section 5. Justice, but at what cost? Danny Rowling was executed by lethal injection on October 25, 2006, at Florida State Prison. For many, his death brought a sense of closure, a final chapter in a dark and painful saga. But for the families of his victims, the pain remained, a constant ache that time could never fully heal. The execution, while bringing an end to Rowling's reign of terror, could never truly erase the scars he had left behind. The legacy of the Gainesville Ripper extended far beyond the courtroom and the execution chamber. It had a profound impact on the community, on the way people lived their lives, on the way they viewed the world around them. The fear that had gripped Gainesville in the late 1980s lingered long after Rowling's capture. The murders served as a stark reminder that evil can lurk in the most unexpected places, shattering the illusion of safety and security. The carefree innocence of the past was gone, replaced by a heightened sense of awareness, a lingering fear that whispered in the shadows. The Gainesville Ripper had not only taken the lives of 5 innocent people, but he had also stolen a part of the town's